Hello and welcome. My name is Rory, Webflow developer and co-founder of Propeller Digital. And today I'm going to be running you through a tutorial on how to build a ChatGPT app using Webflow, Wized, and OpenAI's API. So those three tools, what are we going to do with them? Webflow is going to be our front end. You'll want some experience using Webflow and a Webflow account that you have room to create another website on. You'll need an account on Wized by FinSuite, which we're going to use to link OpenAI to Webflow, to send our information off to OpenAI, to update the Webflow front end with the data that we get back from OpenAI. At the time I released this video, Wized is in closed beta. If you want to go onto their Discord server, you might be able to get an invite code, and in a couple of weeks should be open for registrations. OpenAI we're going to be using to access their API for ChatGPT. More specifically, we're going to be using their text completion API and their text model called Text DaVinci, which is what ChatGPT uses. You can register for a free account with OpenAI to access their API. And at the time I released this video, if you create an account, you get $18 worth of credit for their API, which will be plenty for getting a web app up and going and testing it out. So let's go straight into the apps. We have Webflow for the front end, Wized over here, and OpenAI. So we're going to start by building a very quick and dirty Webflow website. We're not going to style it. We're not going to worry about class names. We're just going to chuck down the elements that we need and get it straight into Wized. So we're going to call this ChatGPT story generator is what we're going to be creating. Why not? And basically all we're going to do here is slap a form on the page and put some custom attributes on it to link it into Wized. So let's throw a section, a container, and a heading. Pop that there, and we will just call it generator, little paragraph, enter some text to generate a story using ChatGPT. Okay. Next, we want a form. And what we're going to do is we're first of all just going to, am I even going to bother putting those inside divs? No, quick and dirty. So we're going to call this people in the story. Let's have location of the story. And then we'll duplicate that and that. And we will call this what happens in the story. And that'll do for now. You know, I'm not going to be running any awards with this, just a tutorial. So we go into each text field, and I'll shrink myself down here. Although we don't really need to have a name on these, let's put them on to keep it tidy. So what was that? That was people in story. Plain text is fine. Now the way we get this information into Wized is we have to add a custom attribute, and the name is going to be W-EL, short for Wized element. And we will call this input people in story. And we're just going to do the same for each of these. Location, input location of story. And this one we will call, or we will say, input what happens story. Okay, let's change the text on this to generate a story. And because we need something to happen when we click this, we also need to give this a custom attribute. Okay. Even though we're not going for style here, I also want to add in a text box that will appear and a Lottie animation while the story is being generated. So I'm going to set this to Flexbox, and I'm going to go over to Lottie files, and I'm just going to search for book. Okay, this is pretty nice. This is exactly what I want. Okay, so we're going to download this. Oh, no, I don't upload it to my workspace. Sorry. I'll just download it as a JSON file. Okay, bingo, we got that. Okay, we're going to add in a Lottie file. And we are going to upload our Lottie. And we are going to replace that with our Lottie file. It's a bit big. Let's put the width at that. And we'll stick another heading in here. Make a heading 2. We will take off the margin. And we want to center everything inside of this. And we will say generating your story. Okay, so again, this needs a custom attribute for Wiz to pick it up for us to use it. And we're going to call it Lottie, or we'll call it alert generating story. Okay. Next up, we need a paragraph to put our story inside. So we're going to put that, let's get that inside the container. I know we're not really trying to design it here, but we have certain standards to keep to. And we are going to leave that as it is for now. We're going to call this text story results. I think that'll do for now. So we are going to, before we publish it, we are going to go over to Wized, and we're going to create a new project under my tutorials workspace. And we are going to call this ChatGPT story generator. Now, we need to put in the staging domain of our Webflow site, so I do actually need to publish this first. Or not. I could have gotten this from the dashboard for the settings, but let's grab that. That's loading fine. We'll put that in there. Then the way we connect Webflow to Wized is we have to copy this script that it gives us into the head section of the site. Could go into project settings, but handy thing, the FinSuite extension for Chrome will allow us to go into custom code. And where did that say? The head? Yes. Pop that in there. Save. Good to go. Publish again. Get that code working. It's not exactly a lot on this website. Bingo. There we go. Okay. Continue. Alrighty. Now we're inside Wiz, where things get interesting. So we're not doing any authentication. We're not letting people register and save their stories, as nice as that'd be. That's for down the line. All we need to connect for now is ChatGPT. So inside Wiz, we're going to click My Apps, or it should be open already, and we're going to add our first app, and we're going to call this ChatGPT Completions. There's a number of built-in apps. If your app isn't here, we need to just use a general REST API. So we're going to pop that in there. Okay, so far so good. Over to the documentation for OpenAI. And OpenAI will give us a number of different REST API endpoints to use, or base URLs rather. And this will dictate what ChatGPT is going to do for us. So if we go down here to API reference, what we want is completions. This is essentially what the ChatGPT public side app does. It is a completion model that takes a prompt and returns one or more predicted completions. And here is the URL that we need. So we're going to copy that and we're going to paste that in there like so. Next, we need to send data out. We need to send a request to OpenAI's API. So we're going to go to data out. We're going to click add and we're going to call this ChatGPT generate story. It's going to be my only request, so I'm not going to bother making folders. And now we can connect this to our ChatGPT app. So, oh, I actually made a little error. So we might want to use more than one parts of the API. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to go back into app and we're going to take out completions like so. That way, if we have different API endpoints we want to use, we can populate them in here like so. Completions. Okay. Now we want to execute this on the, we don't want to execute this on the server actually, or do we? Let's come back to that. And we are posting, we're posting information to the API endpoint. Okay. So if we look at the documentation, it's going to tell us what we need to pass to it. So if you were writing this out as a curl request in a text editor, this is the information that you would pass to it. So we already have this part sorted. Next thing is, in the header of the request, we need to pass in content type, which is application/JSON, and your API key, which is a unique API key that you generate for your profile. Keep this secret, treat it like a password. If someone gets your API key, they're going to be able to use your quota, your $18 for free that OpenAI have so generously given you. So what we'll do is we'll copy this, and it's content type, all caps. So in headers, we're going to say content type. We're going to paste that in there. And then I am going to go to my account, view API keys, and I'm not bothered. Or you know what? Instead of cutting out this part of the video, I'll just I'll learn how to block out this API key in Premiere Pro. So here's my API key. Save it, because you won't be able to view it again for security reasons. So this is just going to be a throwaway one that I'm going to use for this. And we're going to go back over here, and we need to say authorization bearer your API key. So, and that was just bearer and then the API key. So bearer, like so, and that's going to return my API key. We also want to tick value is a secret as well as execute on server. What that is going to do is it's going to keep the API key hidden. It's going to execute the request on Wized server. If you don't tick those, people that are code savvy can look at your application and steal your API key, which we don't want. So make sure to tick that. Now we get to the exciting part, the body of the request. So what we're going to use is model. There are different types of models that the completion endpoint can use. They vary in their speed and their cost. Text DaVinci 3 is what ChatGPT uses. It's the best one, gets the best results, can give you the largest text result at the end. The other ones are limited in how much text they can output. It's also the more expensive one, but it's the most fun one and useful one. So in a real world situation, you would test these out to see which works best for you. So we are saying model over here. So we're adding to the body of our request, and we're saying model, and we're pasting that value in there. Next up is prompt. We're going to leave that one to last. That's what we're going to send to ChatGPT. Max tokens is the max number of tokens to generate in the completion. So if you click into this, we can see what tokens are. So if we copy this text up here, tokens is just the way that the GPT text models process information. So this is 244 characters. There's all this coding stuff behind, what a token is and how it splits it up. But there's a max value that you can put on those. I'm just going to put that in as 1,000 for now, max tokens. So that's going to limit how big it can be and how much money or how much of our credits are going to be used. So max tokens, we will say 1,000. And then we're going to do temperature. So let's look at what that does. So the API says, if we find temperature, there it is. So we get to use a number between 0 and 2. I think that was 0 and 1 last time I checked. But as it says here, it will make the output more random. The higher it is, lower values will make it more focused and deterministic. So another good way you can look at this is how much risk the completion API is going to take. So you can play around with this. The higher it goes, the kind of wackier the story is going to be. So for the sake of experimentation, let's notch this up to 2. Let's make it go crazy. Okay. Next is the prompt. This is where things get interesting. So we are going to build a dynamic prompt based on what people enter here. If we click X-ray up the top, we can see the names of our fields. Input, people in story, location of story, what happened story. Let's hide those and click into our value box here. Okay, so let's get started. Write a story that involves the following people. We're going to keep this nice and simple. Under general here, we can see our input field. So this section is going to fill up over time with all the requests that you have created. What we want to do is we want to write a story involving the following people, and then people in story. So actually, let's populate this. Let's say George Bush, Barney the dinosaur. Location of story is going to be the moon. Let's throw it some curveballs. What happens in the story? Okay, we'll go wild here. Okay, now inside our prompt, we will see that this value is being pulled in. Write a story that involves the following people: George Bush, Barney the dinosaur, and in the moon. This is what happens in the story. Okay, so one of the very powerful things about ChatGPT or the completion prompt is that it understands instructions in coding and HTML. So let's do the following. Okay, return the story as follows. And I'm just going to put brackets in here, and I'm going to say a H2 tag. Okay. Then we're going to say the middle, H2 tag, the end. And then we're going to say return the story as red paragraph text. Okay, let's see, can it change it? Okay, that looks good to me. Story takes place in the moon. This is what happens. Oh, we forgot to do a full stop here in a space. So that appears there. Return the story as follows. Return the story in between these tags as red paragraph text. Okay, that looks good to me. So now what we need to do is trigger this. Now there is a trigger option here, but this is for triggering on page load or with the variable condition. It doesn't work for a button. What we need to do is first click at that to get rid of it. We don't want to do anything after the request for now. We're going to go to actions over here, and we're going to create an action called generate story. And we want this to apply to button generate story. And we want this to happen on click in our configuration, perform request. We don't want this to be conditional, we just want it to work. And the request is ChatGPT generate story. Okay, so that's going to start generating it. Now, even for us, it's useful to know when this is generating. So let's get this set up, generating your story. Okay, so we're going to say, close that, and we're going to say story preloader. Okay, we're going to apply this to alert generating story, and we're going to add the configuration. So we want this to be visible if, and it's going to get a little codey here. So if we click under if we click that little drop down arrow by our request, we have results and we have state. Results we're going to look at when it's returning its prompt that it gives us. The state is it requesting, has it requested, the status code, and the status. So we want this to show if this is requesting. So it shouldn't show at the start, will show when it is requesting and stop when it's not requesting. Okay, so far so good. Finally, we need an action to update this text. So we're going to create a new action, close that, and we're going to say display story. And we're going to apply this to our story results. And the configuration is going to be, so first of all, the visibility. And what we want to do is the status code, if it's successful, is going to be 200. So we wanted to do this if it's successful. And then we want to use set text to set it as the result of the request. Now, first of all, we're going to have to get the request to see what the request looks like. So let's go over here to data out, to ChatGPT generate story. We can test this either by clicking the button or by clicking the little plus, the play symbol here. So we have response here, we can drop that down and we can click that. Okay, so now you see is requesting has changed to true, and this is showing, and I just realized that I did not have the Lottie set to loop. So let's quickly go over to the Lottie and set it to loop like so and publish that. And this is going to take a little bit of time. For a real app, we would put a message in to say that, this may take up to 30 seconds. ChatGPT is great, but it is not instantaneous, faster than us humans, but not instantaneous. So we will wait for it to come back with the prompt. Now, I think I have everything set up correctly first time round because it would have thrown an error. Yes, there we go. There we go. Okay. Oh my God. Oh, it's gone wild. It's gone. Okay. Anyways, we'll fix that afterwards. So we'll go to display story, and we want to set the text as the result that it has passed back to us. It was President George Bush who encrypted $1 odd digitally trimmed. Okay, I did not realize how wild temperature number 2 is going to be. So we have this bit set up at least. Let's go back to our data out, and let's bring that temperature way down to 0.5. Okay, and what next? So let's go and preview this on the front end and run it there. Okay, so everything that you do in Wized, as you'll see up here, the development version always reflects the current state of the configurator, which we're in right now. So we'll go over here and let's do the same thing. And what happens in the story? Oh, I want to copy that. We're just going to use this over and over again and generate story. Bingo. So now the request is running, and we have set this div with the text and the Lottie file to only display while the request is running. And boom, our request does not look to have come through. Okay, so we need to do some more testing over in Wized. Let's try that again. We want to refresh the canvas. We want to pull that back in, and we want to say George Bush and the moon and our text, and generate. Requesting is true. So far so good. And let's see why this isn't working. Oh, there we go. There we go. George Bush had always been fascinated by the moon. He dreamed of the day he could stand on its surface and feel the power of its gravity. Lovely. Okay, so the only thing that didn't work there is our HTML. So let's go back into the prompt, and let's say return the story as HTML as follows. And I also realized over in our action here, for display story, we do not want to do plain text. We want to do HTML. Okay, so let's test this out again and see how it goes. George Bush on the moon. And he gets turned into a sheep. Oh, why is that showing up? There we go. Generate, please. Yes, there we go. Okay. It's a sunny day on the moon when Bonnie discovered something peculiar. Okay, so you guys can read that in your own time. We got our red text, and if we inspect these, we have our H2, and it's just put in a paragraph with style color red. So as you probably know, ChatGPT has been in the news a lot recently. The two things that make it extremely powerful in my eyes are, one, its ability to understand language, but two, its ability to understand code. I mean, I did not get very specific there, right? I was very general. I said, return the story as HTML, and then I just stuck into brackets a H2 tag and returned the story in between as red paragraph text. So the fact that it got that right is incredible. But anyways, that brings our tutorial to an end. So for a quick recap, we created a single page in Webflow, which acts as our front end. We tagged each of these fields with a custom attribute, Wiz element, W-EL, and then just a name that we can reference. We did that for each of these fields, giving them a different name. We also put a custom attribute on the button so that we can use it in our action to run the request. We made a little preloader here with a Lottie file. We again gave this a custom attribute, and we also put in a custom attribute for our story results. Back over in Wized, we connected ChatGPT as an app by putting in the base URL, leaving out completions for the time being. We created a data out request using the completions endpoint, the post method, executing it on the server. We added in the two headers, content type, application JSON, authorization, which is bearer followed by our API key. We entered our desired model, our max number of tokens, our temperature. Do not set it as 2 or Wized or ChatGPT is going to go skits on you, which we do not want most of the time. And our prompt is the dynamic part by typing out what we want, by popping in our input fields, which are mapped up in Webflow. We asked it to return it as HTML. We gave the story a structure, asked it to return it as H2 tags with red paragraph text. That was it for the data out. We then needed 3 actions. One, to generate the story. So on click of this button, perform a request, which is the one we made previously. The preloader is set to the preloader attribute. The visibility is set as long as our request is actively requesting, which is important with ChatGPT because the requests can take up to 30 seconds. And finally, we have one to display our story. If ChatGPT returns success, we make it visible. Otherwise, if it failed, it would, make it visible with the lorem ipsum paragraph text. We want to set the text. We want it to be HTML since we asked it to return it as HTML. And we want the text to be the result of our API request. And over here, we have a lovely story about Michael Jackson teaching Bugs Bunny how to sing like him. So that is all for this tutorial. Hope that this was of some use to you. ChatGPT is a lot of fun, so have fun with it. Hope you come up with some exciting app ideas that you can build using Webflow, Wized, and OpenAI. If you have any questions or suggestions for further videos, please drop a comment below the video. And if you're a business or agency that is interested in having a ChatGPT powered web app built for you with Webflow, please reach out to me at my agency email address, which is also in the description and the end of the video. Thanks for watching and have fun with ChatGPT, Webflow, and Wized.